what else can men do listening to this
Mhm.
who, love their wife. They're invested 100% in the relationship and they're not having as much sex as they would like. What are
Okay.
some of their options?
Okay. So first of all, I would say recognize that that list that I read a few minutes ago is her body doing what her body is designed to do. That goes back to what we talked about in terms of evolution and her being more particular with regards to sex. So her body's working. Mother Nature didn't intend for her to have a high sex drive through her lifetime. Now, some women do. Women, for example, who are bisexual have higher sex drives. Women who are single have higher sex drives. We can talk about that if you want. But in longer term relationships, sex drive does tend to diminish. And these, what we call inhibitory factors, show up more. And for single women, this is actually exactly why the people say women and men have the same sex drive. It's because they get confused between when people are single and when people are in a long-term relationship. It's right there. So in
Interesting.
when yeah. So this goes back to evolution and it's called mating strategies, short-term mating strategies and long-term mating strategies. So in a short-term mating strategy, these are people that aren't in a committed relationship and they have different motivations for sex. So a female not committed is motivated for sex, not just because of her sex drive, which often is at the highest point in her life if she's in her 20s. But also she's motivated for sex and it feels like it's a sex drive because she wants to be touched and she wants a connection. Maybe she wants a baby. Lots more motivations for sex at that time, including a higher hormone, higher testosterone level. So her sexual behavior is much more like that of a man's. And so that's when people say women and men's sex drive are the same. They're looking at that data, the college student data, for example. But if you look at data from a long term relationship, we actually don't have a single study suggesting that women and men's sex drives are even equivalent in a long-term relationship. Not even equivalent. Do we have one study? Unless there's something not written in English that I haven't seen, which is possible. But I actually just reviewed this literature.
Probably not. Probably not.
So even as recently as last year, I reviewed this literature for a chapter I was writing. Um, in a long-term relationship, women have lost that motivation for having a baby. She doesn't need motivation for partnership. She's probably getting enough touch from her kids, and her sex drive is lower. So now, in this long-term relationship, she's lost all this desire for sex. Um, so it helps for both partners to understand this. So first of all, nobody's doing anything wrong. We're not pathologizing anybody. This is how bodies are designed and Mother Nature couldn't care if you had sex for your whole life or not. That wasn't her plan. So back to your question of what can he do? So first of all, recognizing this is the lot of a heterosexual couple and all heterosexual couples with very few exceptions have to deal with this. So first of all, I talk about the couple. It goes sort of back to what you're saying about this intimate connection. She needs to feel his body as a place to rest. She
Mhm.
needs to feel, first of all, with sex aside, she needs to feel like that's where she goes to recharge. That's where she goes when she's stressed. That's where she goes to get comfort. We start there. Until we achieve that sensation, it's gonna be very difficult to go from that to enjoying sexual stimulation.
That reminds me of a experiment that Sue Johnson talks about, where they put women in an fMRI machine showing their activation in their brain, and there was, like, distressing stimuli. There was, like, something threatening that was going to give them an electric shock, and it was
Mhm,
painful as well. And they
mhm,
did this experiment in a few conditions, one where the woman was alone, one where she was holding the hand of a stranger, and one where she was holding the hand of her partner. And what they
mhm,
found is if they were securely attached,
mhm,
then the pain was completely reduced. It was subjectively, uncomfortable but not painful. And in
mhm,
terms of the actual brain activity, it was completely non-existent in terms of how painful it was. And if the couple wasn't securely attached, that didn't happen. That the husband holding the hand was no better than a stranger holding her hand. So I think
Uh-huh.
that's really important for people to understand
Mm.
that the quality of your relationship really affects a woman on a physiological, neurological level. And if you can get there, if you can get to that secure attachment, she feels relaxed with you.
Right.
That's so important and that's so powerful. And then that translates into the bedroom.
That's exactly right. So once you've achieved that piece, then I would say to him, help her identify what does excite her. So there's a model of sexual desire put out by the Kinsey Institute that's called the dual control model. You probably heard of it. So there are excitation factors, things that make us want to have sex, and inhibition factors, things that make us not want to have sex. And women have more inhibition factors, like the list I read. They have fewer excitation factors. And what can happen for women as they go through life is they lose touch with what even could be an excitation factor, which kind of just makes sense. Life is stressful and stress closes us. So, when we're stressed and we're reading the news and oh my gosh, it's just like, this is what happens. And there's no good sex from here. You're only going to identify what's exciting from here. So it requires mindful effort to identify what could be exciting. And he can help her do that, not in a naggy kind of way, but how can he support her perhaps in identifying what could be exciting for her now. And what I encourage women to do is either watch porn, read erotica, but the trick is she's got to suspend her criticism because her body can still respond in a way that is exciting, but her brain can say, back to what we talked about earlier, that's not PC. Yeah, I don't like that. And if she's going to criticize everything, she isn't going to find what's exciting. So, in whatever way he can help her or support her in doing her own exploration, he doesn't need to be in on it. It might be something she needs to do alone, but without knowing what excites her, sex isn't going to be enough to get her going. I don't think. What usually has to happen is she needs to start reminding her body she's sexual, masturbate a little bit without having an orgasm, read some erotica, listen to some erotica, look at a little porn, whatever. Get her body sort of moving in that direction again. And then once she identifies some factors, maybe together they can identify how to bring that into the bedroom in a way that she feels good about and comfortable enough with, and they can kind of expand on. So that's the advice I usually give couples.